Hello, everybody. Welcome to a article review. My name is Daniel Suhr. I'm going to be campaigning for governor of California and trying to reform the Democratic Party from within. So here's this article on the New York Times. This is my first article review. The Democrats' 2024 autopsy is described as avoiding the likeliest cause of death. Gee, that's a surprise. So this article, which I've already read, it asserts that the leadership of the Democratic Party isn't even trying to assess the biggest decisions, like whether or not Biden should have run again for re-election, whether or not he should have even been president in 23 and 24. If Harris was the right person to take over, and then the mistakes that she did or did not make en route to losing the election. So here's the picture of Joe and Kamala. Great. Okay, so it starts off, it says, the Democratic National Committee's examination of what went wrong in the 2024 election is expected to mostly steer clear of the decisions made by the Biden-turned-Harris campaign, and it's instead just going to focus on the different allied groups like Emily's List. The audit, which the committee is calling an after-action review, which I find kind of ironic because it's a military term where they focus on, what the decisions that everybody made as they relate to the overall goal and whether they were good or bad, and more info about them. There's this great book that I really recommend called Debrief to Win that is written by a former F-15 weapons school instructor, and he goes into a lot of the stuff that I'm going to be going into for the campaign as well and trying to force some of this thinking into the Democratic Party. So it basically says that it's not going to really focus on what Biden and Harris did. Here's a great line. So, nor is the review expected to revisit key decisions by the Harris campaign, like framing the election as a choice between democracy and fascism, and refraining from hitting back after an ad by Donald Trump memorably attacked her on transgender rights by suggesting that she was for they, them, while Mr. Trump was for you. I remember that commercial. It seemed very effective, and the Harris campaign really didn't try to respond to that at all. Over the course of my campaign for governor, if I can make it to the election, I'm going to be returning again and again to the mistakes that they made, and also their failure to go over them and show some accountability. And they use some sort of pejorative language to the whole thing, which I'm going to get into in a second here. This is a great quote, it says, which is something like eating at a steakhouse and then reviewing the salad instead of the ordering steaks and reviewing that. So here's this quote by Jane Klebe. She says, we are not interested in second-guessing campaign tactics or decisions of campaign operatives. Second guessing is kind of a negative word or a pejorative word. Assessing them, holding people accountable for their decisions, studying, the decisions that were made and whether things went well or poorly, and whether the decisions that people made ended up helping or hurting the campaign towards its goal. And the goal, of course, was to win the presidency and to help out down ballot, Senate and representatives, and then governor elections, stuff like that. There's just this weakness right now in the leadership, the 10 or 12 people at the top of the Democratic Party, where they don't seem to want to hold each other accountable. They don't even want to discuss things like that, which to me is a major admission of weakness. If they thought that they didn't do anything wrong, then they would be saying, yeah, let's review it, let's go in depth. Or if they thought they did really well, but there was just some sort of, bad luck or something like that, which could happen, then they would really be defending their decisions. But basically paying new DNC chairman, this gentleman named Ken Martin, paying him money to not go over those decisions, especially while everything was fresh in the minds of Harris and her team and Biden, his family, and his team, seems like a major, major admission of weakness, and it's frustrating. So again, so the article sort of continues on. This is from the New York Times about what they are and are not doing, and they're expecting to be done later this year. It's basically going to take them about 6 months total. And again, so here's, they said it's going to avoid discussing whether or not Mr. Biden should have run for re-election. I don't think he should have. I don't even think he should have been president because he was so declined. Some of Harris's top aides have faulted him for dropping out so late. People should also fault Harris for greedily rushing to get the nomination instead of letting it go to the convention and allowing for more time. She says she only had 107 days to campaign. Well, she volunteered to take the nomination. She could have said, let's go to the convention, or that this isn't enough time for me. She volunteered for this job. So it seems kind of an ex post facto complaint to complain about how many days you had after the election was over when you knew ahead of time how much you were going to have. Hunter Biden makes some irrelevant comment. That guy is totally pointless. Nobody should listen to him at all. So a little bit lower down, Mrs. Klebe says she expected the report to accelerate the party's diversion of resources from advertising to organizing. Advertising and organizing, neither of these are really as important as policy. People vote for policy. They don't really vote for parties necessarily, a little bit for people, but a lot of times people are just a proxy for a set of values that the person embodies and the policies that he or she is going to be supporting and enacting when a policymaker, after they've won the election. Painful. It's painful to read this stuff. It's painful to see how weak the Democratic Party is acting. And so over the course of this campaign, as long as I can make it, I'm going to keep putting pressure on them to review these things. And I'm probably just going to have to do it myself with the help from supporters. We're going to have to tough it out and do the heavy lifting ourselves. So the DNC's, this is Mr. Rivera. He says the DNC's post-election review is not a finger-pointing exercise. It's about bringing together Democrats across the ecosystem to adopt an actionable playbook to win, not just for 2026 and 28, but to dominate for cycles to come. The only way the Democratic Party really deserves to dominate elections, multiple elections in a row, is if the Republicans are just refusing to change like they did during the FDR and Truman presidencies. But a responsive Republican Party adapts the good policies so the Democrats win an election, they put in certain policies like Obama did with the with federal, national health care, Obamacare. And by 2016 election, Donald Trump said he was going to try to repeal and replace, but he never even ended up doing that. And an effective Democratic presidency ends with persuading the Republicans that they cannot win unless they adopt the policies that the Democrats were proposing in the first place. And so I don't really think that that's even a smart goal. It's not good for our country having a two-party system is much better. And they also use pejorative language here. This is not a finger-pointing exercise. Well, it should be an accountability exercise. It should be an evaluation exercise. How are we going to do better in 26 and 28 if we aren't going, using the Democrats aren't in power right now. We have plenty of time and energy to go over all these decisions that we made because nobody's in charge really at the federal level. This is like our golden opportunity to use this. And of course, the Democratic leadership is doing the opposite. As a general rule of thumb, I feel like just listen to whatever the leadership, in charge of the DNC right now wants to do and just do the opposite. Democrats are clear-eyed about the challenges facing the party. I don't really think that they are at all. Many of which were rooted well before the 2024 election cycle. This was a winnable presidential election. Every time a Democratic voter gets mad at Donald Trump, you should turn that anger onto Biden and Harris and the people who've been making these decisions. It didn't have to be this way. Trump didn't have to win this election. He was it would have been easy and straightforward to beat them for a sober-minded Democrat. We didn't have that. So it's frustrating. And then there's two more reviews going on right now, at least two. One is led by Jen O'Malley, who oversaw the Biden and Harris campaigns. She features pretty heavily in this book, Original Sin, which I'm also going to be talking about on my channels as much as possible. She doesn't seem that great, but she's going to be working with Emily's List to oversaw the group's independent political polling. Emily's List, for people who don't know, is, they kind of engage in sexual discrimination against men. They're basically just trying to support pro-choice women. I don't know why they're not trying to support pro-choice men as well. Seems like that's also an additional problem within the Democratic Party right now. They can't be the party that is against discrimination when we engage in discrimination. We'll get into that on another video. This is the source for some optimism. The Strategic Victory Fund is a network of liberal donors and organizations, and they're led by this gentleman named Scott Anderson. So many people in my world after 2016 jumped into a resistance mode that there wasn't a real thoughtful moment to talk for a minute with all the key people about what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong with every aspect of politics and culture. And that's exactly the problem that happened after 2016, and it's what we're going to have to do now, which is go over all these things and jettison the different topics and cultural mistakes that are holding the Democratic Party back and, sacrifice some things in order to get the policies that do need to be put in place. Put those into place. Source really for optimism is this group led by Scott Anderson. And that's about all I have for right now. We're running out of time. So my name is Daniel Suhr. Check out these links right here on the left side of the screen and let me know your comments below. Thanks. Bye.